Since 1983, FAME has helped business and education work for Maine. Contact the authority, the Finance Authority of Maine. You're watching Mainebiz Sunday, Maine's business news source.
Worker misclassification is estimated to cost the state $36 million each year in lost income tax revenue, according to a new report from the Governor's Joint Task Force on Employee Misclassification. The state has recently increased scrutiny of the issue with a new law that tightens the definition of what constitutes an independent contractor for workers' compensation purposes. Today we'll speak about these issues with Laura Fortman, Commissioner of the Maine Department of Labor, Michael Bourque, Director of the Corporate Communications at MEMIC, Stephen Minkowsky, Deputy Director of Benefits Administration at the Workers' Compensation Board, and Kathleen Newman, President and CEO of the Maine chapter of the Associated Builders and Contractors of Maine. Great. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Great. I'm glad we could be here. You know, periodically we do programs, usually it's right after a legislative session. We bring on a labor law person and we dissect the latest labor laws. And I always say that's that program always reminds me of going to the dentist. I mean, labor law, come on. Everybody, it hates it. It's painful. We hate it. But you know what? It's important, and it's good for us, and you feel so good when you've done. You know, so let's begin the drilling, I guess, is what we're going to do. This one is a different piece.
That's a really warm way to start this program.
The Commissioner of Labor is here. I forgot. But I do want to start with you, Commissioner, and because this one is an important one. It's an expansion of the issue of misclassification, and we're going to talk about some of the new legislation. But in particular, give us the idea. What is misclassification? Why is that important to our state and the economy?
Well, as you pointed out, there's roughly $36 million being lost in revenue. So that's one reason why it's important. The other reason that it's important is the impact it has on people. Whether those people are the business owners who are playing by the rules and are covering people as employees, or those workers who are losing out on certain protections if they're not being classified appropriately. This is not a new issue. This is something that has been around for a long time. So it's not as though this is a brand new thing that Maine is doing. It's not. What is happening is that the governor has directed us to work together to look at the various agencies that are responsible for some level of enforcement and making sure that there's a level playing field and increasing that cooperation across state agencies.
Kathleen, I'm going to turn to you now, and from the kind of the contractor's point of view, contracting world point of view, what is the impact of misclassification on the contracting industry? How does that issue affect you and your members?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a big issue, and it is something that we've been dealing with. I remember one of the first meetings I ever did as president of Associated Builders and Contractors was a meeting that the Commissioner Fortman put together, and there must have been 30 stakeholders in the room. It has an enormous impact, not just on the construction industry, but I think we're delving into some of the other industries. I think the construction industry has been a focus. It's certainly, there are some competitive issues. There are issues of we sort of disagree somewhat with some of the statements out of the Department of Labor and the Workers' Comp Board. We don't think it's necessarily employers who are misclassifying. I think there's an element of employees who don't want to be classified as employees, of workers who would rather be independents. They're entrepreneurs, they're sole proprietors. So there's a lot of sort of misunderstanding about who's an independent contractor, who's an employee. I'm sure we'll get into all the different definitions that each agency has. Right. From the construction industry perspective, we feel like there needs to be a very clear definition and a bright line. Who's an independent, who's an employee, and that's what we've been working toward with the agencies for several years now, and I think we're getting close. Okay,
well, I'm going to follow up on that. I am going to come back to you, Commissioner. That it is the issue. I mean, misclassification, we're talking about independent contractor classification problem. Folks hold themselves out to be that. And there are claims of confusion out there. We have the IRS, the state revenue definitions, the workers' comp definitions, the unemployment compensation definitions. But you've been quoted as saying that, calling business people that make that, or use that argument as being disingenuous.
Well, I think that when people say that they don't understand the ABC test, which is the test that's used in unemployment insurance and is really the most prevalent test being used nationwide, that test has not changed since 1935. So it's not as though something has just happened recently and it's taking people by surprise. This is a law that has been on the books since 1935, and I believe that There's information out there. We're trying to do more outreach.
Enforcement. You did find that the misclassification of employees occurred. 29% of employers were audited across all industries in 2004. It found it in misclassification at 35% in 2005, 43% in 2006, 41% in 2007. Seems like there's a rising trend there. Are you auditing more? Have you focused on this as an enforcement issue? Or what is the
No.
Well, you did focus on the construction industry.
We did focus on the construction industry. That is accurate. And that is one of the industries that we are seeing high degrees of misclassification of workers in. There are a couple of, across the country, it is primarily construction, healthcare, and IT.
Yeah. I'm going to move to the workers' comp piece of this, and the new legislation that was passed last year, went into effect January 1st. First, Steve, I'm going to start with you. Can you give us just the really kind of 30-second or less description of what is that and why did it happen?
What happened was the legislature created a 12-part conjunctive application for predetermination for construction contractors. It's a 12-part test, and there were some issues in regards to the application. We received that feedback from the community. We worked with Kathy and other members of the community, worked with the Labor Committee. Came back with a refined form that's simplified. It's easy. It's on the website. In fact, the governor signed it as emergency legislation yesterday, on Tuesday. Okay. And it's portable. The application that's approved will be receiving a certificate from the Workers' Comp Board in regards to bring it from site to site. It's valid for 1 year. It is rebuttable, so that should there be an injury, the person, the subcontractor, can file a workers' comp claim in regards to any type of injury. So a filed first report would be done, as well as a petition for award.
So just so I'm clear,
yes.
If I show up on a work site and I'm holding myself out as an independent contractor, I have to have one of two things: either workers' comp insurance, here's my workers' comp insurance, I'm going to talk about that in a second, or this predetermination.
That is correct.
Okay. MEMIC. So you're the largest provider of workers' comp in Maine?
We insure about 20,000 employers in Maine.
How has this impacted you and your ability to provide coverage? And just talk to us about that.
Well, similarly, we're interested in fairness for all customers. I spoke yesterday, actually, with a contractor who feels like he's competing with folks who are using all independent contractors that really shouldn't be, that really under this new law shouldn't be the case. And so that's what the law that came into effect on January 1st was attempting to solve. Mm-hmm. And I think we're a step closer to doing that. I think the new form that Steve mentioned will just begin to get us really the opportunity to see if that will work for people. The other part that it does, and Kathleen deserves a great deal of credit for this, for helping to create that form, it does draw a line for those people who are wanting to, who really are independent and should be independent. It gives them a way to be able to say, no, we're predetermined. We've had a look. Okay. Somebody's looked at us. This is who we are.
Good. I'm going to have to wrap right there, but we are going to keep you around for an afterthought segment so we can spend more time really getting into the issues. I know it goes by fast, so I want to keep you around. And folks can then tune in and hear about that. We want to talk more about that, make sure we understand how it works. But I also want to get into some of that interagency cooperation stuff, those recommendations in the task force report, and also the new law that is being considered right now, too, that may be impacting the authority of the Workers' Comp Board. So, thanks. You can catch more of this discussion in our exclusive Afterthought segment, seen only on the web. Go to Mainebiz.biz. Stick around, we'll be right back.
Mainebiz Sunday is made possible in part by funding provided by the Finance Authority of Maine.